You're listening to a podcast called Gary, with me, Tom Mann.
And me, Adam Etheridge.
In this week's episode, we're talking bucket lists. We ask, what exactly is a bucket list? Why are they important? And what's on yours?
Welcome to another episode called Gary. Podcast called Gary with me, Adam, and my friend
Tom Mann. How you doing, Mr. Etheridge?
Good to see you, mate. Thank you for letting me do the intro this week. Sorry, it was not as polished as we usually get, but I think if after a few times, we'll get there. So, yes, welcome to Bucket List Week. And it's something that we talked about with myself and another person briefly, and I thought it was something really important that kind of helps people have a bit of perspective about kind of the sort of the near future, the distant future, reality in terms of things that they maybe want to do. Is it realistic to have certain things on your bucket list? Is it just good to have them on there? So I think there's lots of little in-betweens, and I think we can have a good chat about things that we'd maybe like to do before we die, or maybe things that we just don't want to do, don't want to leave and regret that we didn't do. So what do you think, Tom?
I think that sounds terrific, and I think it's the sort of topic that people of our age start to think about more and more, don't they? We are both 45, starting to lose count, to be honest with you. I do have to think about how old I am a lot more because the years go by, it becomes less meaningful. But we are approaching a meaningful birthday in 5 years, the big half century. And, it's just the classic cliche that everyone says, like, how did the time pass so quickly? How am I this old? How have I probably lived more years already than I'm going to continue to live? It's all those big questions of our age, isn't it?
I also think I think you kind of combine points in your life as well where people say, I have midlife crisis and things like that. And I think it's for a lot of people, it's that realization, as you said, that the majority of your years are already spent, and there is this kind of period of your life when you've gone through your usual teens and 20s, and then you go into the 30s where you start actually sort of taking life a bit more seriously, having kids and things like that. I mean, I didn't have kids till I was late 30s, so I think sometimes you get to certain stages as well in those sort of years where time goes a bit quicker, and you kind of you're left in that situation where you sort of feel like maybe the years are slipping by a bit quick because you're just so invested in things like bringing kids up and doing the sort of the usual stuff, the day-to-day stuff, getting the job done and get your money in, getting the house done, getting providing for your family and getting your sort of your life sort of getting your shit in order sort of thing. But sometimes what happens by doing that, you kind of put aside the things that that maybe the bit of fun things, the planning for the big things, because you just stuck in the kind of the here and now a bit. And I think it's good to sort of have time to reflect and just sort of even if it's just a time to sort of maybe give yourself a bit of kind of a nice feel of that you can still have a bit of fun, like doing this. This is one of the things that we really, really good at doing out these sort of got to try and be with someone and do some things that not always just about your little bubble that sometimes is your family. I think COVID as well didn't help, but I think it's very, very helpful to have a little bit of a kind of a check-in with yourself and sometimes your peers about these sort of years that are coming up.
Yeah, as you as you were talking there was a few things that came to mind from popular culture. The classic is John Lennon phrase, life is what happens while you're making other plans. Also, probably made more famous by the Ferris Bueller film. So that's one, as you were talking, really just resonated with me. The other is that the movie Up, where it's just such a sad, poignant opening, isn't it? It's just absolute genius where this guy, husband and wife, they've grown up together their whole lives and they've wanted to go to this place their whole lives. And then you just see them, life gets in the way, and, they keep having to smash the jar of pennies they've saved up and repair this and repair that. And it doesn't happen because life happens. And, we often sit there waiting for life to start. And it's, again, Pink Floyd, what's that quote from Time? You tell me, it's you missed the starting gun, all that stuff.
I know exactly what I mean. I can't quote it right now, but I totally get exactly what you mean. And I think you're right in the fact that your priorities become very immediate around sort of the getting serious years. I think that's sort of the sort of, it's not necessarily day to day. Sometimes it can be just day to day. And lack of sleep is a huge element in this period of life, and it does get easier, as I'm told. And you've said in the past that certain, different elements get easier in respects to that, and it's sort of, you start to sort of get your life back as your kids don't want to be around you as much, and it's the reality of they get their own lives, so I think there's just that period for people, and men are criticized for having the getting the sports car type moments and these sort of things, because it is this want to try and recapture the element, a bit like I was speaking about last week, that kind of one foot in the, want to be full on, just like happy with being a dad and a husband, and just what that means to be, and just sort of be really full of of enjoying that role, and also that kind of that foot or sleeve, maybe toe, still in the pool of independence and and doing what you want to do whenever you want to do it. And I think it becomes more of an obvious thought when you start thinking about what are you really going to be able to achieve in your latter years, and what can you accept about not doing and things that you want to do, and is it something that you choose to grab hold of with two hands and go, I'm going to do these things, or I'm going to try and do these things and sort of live with vigor? Or is it going to be, well, this is the cards have been dealt now, and I'm just going to cruise through this period and hopefully in X amount of years I can go, okay, I'm free to go to Las Vegas with the boys again. It's like I say, it depends on what you're kind of, what sort of matters to you, because I think there's guys and girls who go off and do holidays and things like that, and it's nice for those people to kind of if that's what you're into. But at the same time, I don't want to be like away from my family for a long period of time. I wouldn't want to go on like a trek across the Andes, or try and get to to get to the top of K2 and just to sort of prove that I live by trying to almost kill myself. But at the same time, it's still the what really do I want out of my next, say, 20 or 30 years, that are not necessarily just things to fulfill me. They are things that are kind of like I want to see and tick off before I check out.
Do you think a bucket list to one person is the same as a bucket list to another? Is there a standard way of defining a bucket list? I suppose in its simplest form, you can say it's the things we want to do before we die. But having spoken before we actually came on air, you offered an interesting perspective, which was that we often think of bucket lists as almost quite of a selfish thing, but actually it's about can I make it to that milestone of my child's life? Or my friends, or it's more than just yourself, maybe, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's it. It's like, as I said, is it kind of old fashioned for me to say that I kind of want to be around to see my kids, I don't know, get married or have kids of their own. And it's not like I'm saying I want to be a granddad. It's, I kind of feel like I want to be present enough, or, if I have the facility or the faculty, to be, to enjoy the sort of those stages of my kids' sort of life in terms of, them becoming adults, young or not, because I said I had kids quite late. So my kids, I'll be sort of in my sort of mid to late 60s when my kids are sort of in their beginning of their adult years. Am I going to be around to see that and see how they turn out? Am I going to be able to kind of be around to sort of enjoy a different level of kind of relationship with them? And also it's the other things of, like, as you say, like my friends as well. And it's like being in a situation where we can have those times where, the kids are gonna not really want to be around as much. Maybe they're going to have their own lives. They're going to want to sort of, we're going to be taxis and banks. That's pretty much in an ATM and a taxi rolled into one. And, I'd be cynical, obviously, but, realistically, these are sort of this stage is the kind of, like I said before, they want you, they want to be with you, they kind of, they want to stay in bed with you, the things that kind of sometimes can be annoying where, you just think, gosh, another sleepless night where X, Y, and Z happens, but realistically, they're finite. And in some ways, it's realizing that those other moments are also finite in a different ways, that they're kind of finite in the fact that you might not even get to there, so it's that kind of moment where you think, well, do I want to be putting on my list seeing my kids get married? Maybe they don't want to get married, but it's a kind of, as I say, acknowledgement of a period in their lives that you want to sort of be around for. And it's not necessarily just a selfish, I want to be a granddad, or I want to walk them down the aisle, but I also just want to sort of see them become, the other version of themselves that you hope they turn out to be.
Yeah, I've been keeping a diary now for like well over 1,000 days straight, and every now and then I'll look back to see, what were we doing last Easter bank holiday Monday or the Good Friday, and I look back last year, and it was quite poignant because it was on the Easter Friday, Good Friday or whatever it is, and we'd gone to the park on a lovely sunny day, and my daughter, who was 10 at the time, really wanted to go on a bouncy castle. And Frank my son was already too big to go, by a few years on there. So he couldn't go already. But then I did kind of think this could be the last time that she is small enough to be able to go on there. Not that she wouldn't want to, because I think even as an adult, bouncy castles are fun things.
Yeah.
The bouncy slide, actually. But it's just moments like that when you think, gosh, there'll always be a last time you read the bedtime story, or a last time they do this, or like, and when you catch yourself and you realize that probably is the last time they do such and such, that is quite a poignant thing.
Yeah, very much so. And was it yourself that was talking about the book 18 Summers? Was it yourself, or someone was telling me about it?
Possibly. I've definitely talked about it, or conversed about it before.
Yeah. And I think it's there's moments like that where you kind of it's not sort of poignant, and it's poignant in the fact that he kind of, if you boil it down to certain events like that, like you're saying, the last time or the next time they could be doing something is, you hit the mark, and then that's it. It's done. But also, it's the things where I think it's also, in terms of what my idea of a bucket list is for me, is just taking time to kind of think about the things that really are going to happen over the next sort of 20 odd years, and try and sort of think about, keeping those things in mind, of like, really kind of how many holidays or family holidays are they going to want to go on, and where do we want to do those sort of things? What is sort of, it's things like that. That's how I feel. It's more about sort of, it's also doing things with, like, you guys again, like sort of, we had that random Alton trips, that Alton Towers trip. And I was saying, wouldn't it be nice in a way if we all could have had the kids at a level where we all went and we had that same photo, but with all the kids. And again, it's a bit kind of cliche, but it is those moments where you think, oh Christ, look at us then, and look at this, these little things that we made, and a bit like what we're talking about, films, and it's not necessarily a bucket list, but it's things that you kind of want to share with them as well. And again, I'm being very sort of around my kid focus at this particular moment, but as we're on that point, there are things like that I kind of, I'm sort of itching to sort of go, to share my sort of joy of certain things with the kids, to hoping that that's something that's a bit of a legacy that they will kind of, they might live on in them in a way, and that might, part of me and the sort of the person I am will kind of live through them in the kind of some of the experiences that I find that shaped my life as a young person. And that's the sort of thing. I don't expect them to like what I like, but at the same time, it might be that you show them a film, or we go to a theme park or something, and it's something that sticks with them, and it just it's then passes on a generation where it might make it into their life enough for that to be sort of a bit of a milestone for me, because it's kind of, it's within them from then on. Does that make any sense? Is that kind of, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense to me, because I feel very similar to that. It's like, for example, because I'm speaking with you now, that obviously I am mindful of things that put me in mind of you, and so it was like last year we went and stayed me and my kids went and stayed with your parents, because I was at a loose end because my wife was studying and on placement, on nursing placement, and so I hadn't visited your parents' place in Wales for a long time, and it was a place that I always had very fond memories of. Summers going there and staying with you, and we'd look at a castle and just hang around the house and watch movies and stuff like that. And so to be able to do that with them, and them to actually spend some time with your parents as well, was a lovely thing, because again, they will know, they will have experienced something similar-ish to what I did as a kid.
Yeah.
And they could go back to that same place and have a sense of me, and it's things like that. But definitely the movies thing, I've enjoyed that so much over the last few years as my kids have got older, being able to watch and appreciate films that I love. And I do think that films, music, they're brilliant because they are a permanent record. You can just keep going back to them again and again over your life.
Yeah.
And so once the kids are introduced to it, and if it's something they really enjoy, then they will, and hopefully that will put them in mind of me. And things do remind you of people that you've lost, don't they? In sometimes a poignant way, but sometimes in a really good way too. So no, it completely makes sense. And in terms of that sense of a bucket list, are there going back to the concept of a bucket list as I'd like to tick that one off before I die, but more of a kind of a experience or maybe a selfish thing. Is there anything in particular, or not a selfish thing, but more of a personal thing? Are there any experiences that you hanker after that you would like to do?
See, I think the part of this is helpful to try and actually bring up those thoughts, because I think for many years I've just used to kind of, as I said before, just sort of functioning on a day-to-day / weekly basis. And, most of your planning is done around work and parties and kids things you do. So you kind of the sort of the big things become very kind of distant, and it's very difficult sometimes just to say, oh, I'd love to go and, I don't know, white water rafting in the Grand Canyon, or so, I don't know, whatever. Do you know what I mean? Or in something that's kind of super extraordinary or something. Because I just don't. I say it's strange. I just don't have those kind of thoughts very often. I don't have those kind of like sitting there thinking, God, I want at 50, I want to go and do this. I think for me,
I want to go and meditate in Tibet on a mountain somewhere.
Exactly.
I mean, I actually think that this is sort of us doing this podcast.
Yes.
It's kind of a bucket list thing, as you were hinting earlier on, because when we were much younger, maybe in our 20s, I always felt that you and I could do a good kind of radio show and, just record our chats like this. And podcasts didn't exist when I was talking about hospital radio or something like that. So
yeah,
I feel like we're already ticking a big one off doing this. And actually, not that I've particularly followed this advice I'm about to tell you, but when I've been trying to get a bit more fit, as you do every now and then, and I was watching the transformation of the Guardians of the Galaxy star.
Oh, Chris Pratt.
And it's quite inspirational if you go on YouTube and you want some inspiration about that sort of thing, because he basically says, I did this routine, I worked really hard, I hauled some ass to do it, but ultimately I realized whether I did this or whether I didn't, a year would still pass, the time will still pass, and I may as well do this as not do it, if you know what I mean. And I thought that was quite a good thing to, yes, it's an obvious thing to say, but it's like this podcast, isn't it? We can fit in an hour or so a week, and that hour we'd have probably wasted doom scrolling on our phones. But actually, we're doing this and making the time.
Yeah,
it's not a hugely time intensive thing, but it's actually going to be something that we'll be able to look back on, very, very fondly, and be really glad we did it.
And this leads to some of the points that we were talking about before, where some of the elements to this podcast were one of the big things for me was the sort of the therapeutic and filling up the bucket sort of thing, filling up the tank, as you put it quite poignantly. And it's very easy to sort of put those things aside and just, as you say, death scroll or just watch a program or just procrastinate in some way, which doesn't actually, it's not a problem if that's what you like doing, but at the same time, it's very easy to sort of con yourself out of your own time as such. And it's also, if you have the right motivation, doing things like this is such a big thing and such a big help to my mental health, and just be able to kind of, as I say, to to talk to you, and you know, it's things like that where we just find a lot of excuse of mundanity to not do things. And I think you're right in that sort of right. If you're incentivized correctly and the penny drops, and you're not so deep in denial and sort of the rut, you know, these things are achievable. And I think it's this thing that we're doing now is as a stepping stone for me to sort of realize, one, that I have some value in what I say, which helps me kind of feel better about who I am and wanting to be who I am and not trying to pretend to be someone that I'm not. And these are sort of the things that we talked about right at the beginning. You know, the reasons to kind of to do these things is to just feel happy about the person you are and not feel like you've got to adapt or change or say things that you don't mean or don't want to say because it's what you feel you need to. And I think, as I say, that's yourself and a few others are, you know, people that I can talk to in this way, and it's so important to have that. And I'm, you know, so grateful that we can do this together because it helps me, and I enjoy the time that we spend together. And you know, it's we're on a digital screen talking to each other, looking at that handsome face across the monitor of mine, but you know, it's part of the reality that it stops us going, means I have to leave the house and you have to get the house ready, or we have to sort of, it sounds really silly to be that's inconvenient, but they're the little things that just, should we give it a miss this week, mate? Or should we just do it next week? Or can we do it tomorrow? And it's such a good thing that we've got things in place to just try and take some of those barriers. And I think that is part of the bucket list, is try and think of things that you've maybe got barriers in the way of, and how do you find the way to remove those barriers to get to doing those things or to experience those things. And I say it could be just that you spend more time with your friends, or you have that phone call with your parents more often, or it's that sort of stuff where you think, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, or it's fine, I've got time. And it's surprising how quickly, it's cliche, how quickly time will go past. It's a bitch. And I said to you before, sometimes part of my ADHD I think I've got the ability to bend time, and I don't. And that's the harsh reality, is that every second, every minute doesn't change for anyone. And it's not, I'm not trying to be too deep, but that's the sort of thing, is that you've got to balance the enjoyment of doing nothing possibly with finding that little spark of inspiration just to do something that just kind of allows you just to either fill the tank up or get a bit of headspace that makes you, probably a happier, more rounded person to be around. And that's got to benefit the people that you spend time with and yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a couple of things that occurred to me as you're talking there is, the one thing about the time passing quickly is it does pass quickly, but sometimes you can use that to your advantage, because if you're going through a particularly tough time, what has helped me over time is to think it's all temporary. The good stuff and the bad stuff. I just keep quoting songs and things, but George Harrison, all things must pass. I'm sure he didn't come up with that phrase, but all things do pass. And so when life is rough, that's the thing that can get you through sometimes, is thinking, before you know it, this phase will be over, or this particular thing that I am not enjoying will be over. So that's the flip side of it, the kind of positive side of time going quickly. And then the other thing that I was thinking of was you were saying about, just those things that can make you, little things that can make you feel better, just by, and therefore sometimes we feel we don't deserve these things. And I think particularly when we need them the most, we will say to ourselves that we don't deserve something because we're not valuing ourselves enough.
Yes.
And also, if you're in a stressful situation, especially when you're a parent, because being a parent is a stressful thing, and so when you're both stressed, sometimes you're the one that can resent the other one for doing something that seems enjoyable, and sometimes it's the other way around. But actually, you're right. People do, by looking after yourself, you that gives you the strength to be there for other people. So I think it is important to make time for yourself, and even if that's just, if you can, getting out of the house, if you're able to do that. We've had some lovely sunshine the last 3 days. And I've just really enjoyed, just taking, when I have been in the office as well, because I do work from home a lot, but when I have been in the office, actually going out, I'm very lucky I work near a park, and, it's just like thinking to yourself sometimes, this is as good as it gets. And Jack Nicholson. So they keep coming out with all these cliches. But I do think that. I think this is as good as it gets. This is, now is your life, right? You stop waiting for life to begin, or it'll be great when that happens, or when the kids are a little bit older, or it's just like, this is life right now. It's a lovely sunny day. You're taking a moment for yourself. Appreciate this moment, and that's really, I've been trying to do that more. It's not when things are hard and your head's in a bad place, it's harder to do that.
Definitely. And I think it's the pace of life, the kind of, say, the priorities. So it's very easy to convince yourself that you haven't got time for something, or something else is more important, or or sitting on, as you say, death scrolling is kind of the only thing you're really allowed to let yourself do, or taking yourself off for an extra long shit because that's the only time you have privacy, and you can sit and no one's going to bother you because that anyone opens that door is going to get the death stank. And it's that, someone was saying, that passive aggressive taking back of time, and that's the
ultimate dad move.
It is, and it's those moments where that's the resentful element. You hide away in the toilets to get some quality time, and only do you think about leaving is when your legs go numb from sitting there for long enough. It's reality, and I think that's the thing, is that being mindful is obviously very important, because it's something that we just do not do as a majority of people. I'm sure that most people would admit that they just don't take time to do that. They say, sitting, just being. They say you're not a human doing, you're a human being, and that's it's again another cliche thing. There's a good it's like one of those, again, it was a TikTok thing, but they have these interviews, and they tend to do them with, say, a number of stars, and they were sitting around a table and they'll be talking about stuff. And the one was with Tom Hanks, and he was saying about I can't remember who he was quoting, whether it was him, he was saying it, but he was saying about, this time shall pass. And then, like, it's much what you were saying of good and bad, the reminder is this time will pass. So if you think, you got time for to do that, and the kids are there to play with, and while they're young, time will pass, and soon they won't be. They'll be doing other things, and when you're in painful times, and you say these things will pass, and life goes on. So it's kind of a sort of a two-side perspective, where the same thing means be mindful, but also be hopeful for the fact, the fact that you will keep going, and you will get through strife, and especially when you've got people around you. And I think it's just important to keep touch with those people and do things that I think with great friends, and say you're never too far away to say, oh gosh, it's been too long, mate, let's do something. And sure, these things are easily done. It's just that we all find it very easy to just go, kids are only in bed now, Christ, it's like 9 o'clock, and they should have, and I've not had any me time. But it's important to kind of encourage each other and support each other as parents and spouses and things like that, to have individuality as well, and have identity, that you're not just a dad, you're not just a husband, you're an individual as well. And it's really important to, as I say, to keep those elements in mind. And when you're making that bucket list, it's that those elements of what are the things that are meaningful to you as a the different yous that there are. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that you very eloquently just expressed some really interesting things there that I just agree with. And I do wonder sometimes. I mean, I am as prone to wasting time as the next person. I can waste an awful lot of time, and the older I get, the more guilty I feel about it. But I am interested in an awful lot of things, and there's no end to things that I'd like to do. And so, I do kind of do quite a lot of things that I enjoy. So this podcast, I love video editing. I've got my YouTube channel, and you can spend as long as you want doing that. Obviously, that's a more solitary activity. So it's really nice to do something like this, where it's spending time with friends and and spending time with friends and loved ones. But I think there are people out there that really struggle with enjoying themselves, and I think here of, say, really kind of driven people. So I think people who are very high powered and have very responsible jobs when they're in their prime, and also very eminent and well respected. I do think that a lot of them struggle when they retire, because they lose the eminence. They're no longer that doctor or whatever that has that instant respect or authority, and they're also they've been so driven by their career and work that they really struggle when it comes to retirement, and they worry about it. And that's why a lot of people don't retire. They just kind of semi-retire and then keep working. And this is that. And then I think there's people that, for one reason or another, and perhaps it's just they've not had the best of life circumstances, they don't know themselves very well, and they don't have a clear sense of what they do enjoy, and they tend to be swayed by other people and a sense of what they should be enjoying or they should be doing, and a sense of kind of what everyone else is. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts that you can have is learning. It takes a while to know yourself, but to kind of just to kind of trust your instincts about things that you are interested in. And there's plenty of things that I'm interested in that you won't be, and vice versa, because we just naturally are drawn to things. And I think there's an awful lot of people that it might just be that they are so, their life circumstances, maybe they're a full-time carer and they just have no time for themselves because they are unfortunately having to dedicate all their time to looking after someone. And there were so many circumstances, and I'm incredibly fortunate that I get to do things like this and be with my friend. But there's an awful lot of people that either can't do what they want to do, or they don't really know what it is they do want to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I was kind of, this is something that I was sort of running through my head about what I was going to say as well, is that I think the other part is what you're saying about knowing yourself, is that I think also so usually people get to a period in their life where they don't care about what people think, and to a point, their lives shift away from worrying about keeping up appearances or or worrying about what people think about them. And they hopefully find a sort of a level of, they know themselves enough and accept themselves. And I think that's kind of the sort of the journey that I'm on and trying to force myself to be into, to be authentic to myself and trust my thoughts and have confidence in the way what I think, and not, as you say, do or say things and be in a way that isn't what I want to do. So I think that in itself is a huge sort of element on a bucket list, is to know thyself and to thy own self be true, and to embrace the kind of who you are. And the thing I thought of, I was thinking about is, you become acceptant of how much ace rimmer you are and how much ace hold you are, because if you can be happy with the bits about yourself that your friends are drawn to and that carry on being those people for you, regardless of the understanding that at times you can be the arsehole that we all can be. We're never all going to be our best selves all the time. And you don't have to love those elements. I know you say the whole thing about loving yourself, but accepting yourself is such a big, I would say, a big thing on my bucket list. Accepting that, yes, I've got frailties, I've got things about me that people might not like, or people, do like. I'm not going to try and aspire to just be those things or not be those things. It's about knowing, okay, at times these things, we have about ourselves, and you and I have experienced those things many, many times between us and made ourselves laugh because they could come from a place of pure honesty. And I just remember times where, just like the times where we'd be staying over each other's place or something like that. And I know about you, and similarly me, when you're tired, you can be a right twat. And I'm the same. And
Adam, I don't know what you're talking about, mate.
Of course not. Of course not. The shock kung fu master moments, or the one-liners of why is that my problem sort of thing, and just
I know exactly what you're talking about now as well. I know the memory you're thinking of.
Why you bothering me about that shit, and it's those moments of true authenticity, but I still love you, and we love each other for it, because it's honest and it's still raw. It's still like fucking hell, it can be cutting. But
as you know, my dad recently passed away, and my dad was very good at expressing his honesty and his authenticity. He was never shy of saying what he thought, and he was basically, in his last days, not quite the last days, but towards the end, and he was pretty much bedbound, and my stepmom and her daughters were, looking after him all the time, and but yeah, but basically, he wanted a coffee, and my stepsister basically said, "Yeah, I'll get you one." He said, "No, don't you get one. You're shit at making coffee." But don't worry, because your sister's even worse. You can make me a cup of tea. And we just did laugh because, it was completely from the heart. And it was, in a way, it's quite...
There's no malice in it.
Yeah, no, exactly, yeah.
It's those moments, as I say, of true kind of liberation of need to be anything but truthful. And it's not aimed to offend most of the time. But those are the things that I think, when you've got that ability to be those types of people as in yourself around people, and for good or for bad, what you say. And I think that's the thing. It's not that, I'm talking about not caring about what you do and what you say, but I also think it's having that safe place to just be honest about the things you want to say. And I think that's a big thing for me, is to kind of have that feeling of knowing who I am all the time would be a Tibet moment for me.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because it's like people say, other people know you better than you know yourself, and to me, it's very clear who you are, but it's not always quite so simple when you're that person, is it?
Exactly.
And I can absolutely relate, absolutely, and yeah, it's. I think it's being able to, as you say, reconcile all the different aspects to yourself and realize that all of them are just as true as the other one, and yeah, we can all be absolutely horrible. Our capacity for both extremes, the darker and the lighter side of life is unbelievable, really. But it is, and it's also kind of, knowing why and being able to contextualize a little bit, and as well, and saying, this, yeah, I think it's going from kind of not even recognizing it to being after the event going, okay, yeah, that why was I like that? Okay, it was because I was tired, because I was hungry, or because that had happened, or I was grieving, or whatever it was. And in that particular moment, that's why my behaviour was like it was. To going to while you're in that moment, going, do you know what? I am actually feeling very angry here, or very, very off, and the reason why I am like that is because of X, Y, and Z. And rather than judging myself, it's just kind of getting through the moment and thinking, yeah, there's always a context behind things, and sometimes you kind of have to recognize that. And I think in recognizing that, it does help you to, if you don't fight against it, it's less likely to cause you problems in a funny way. I don't mean go with it. I don't mean, go with a full anger or whatever. I just mean kind of going, why am I angry? Okay, I am angry. That makes sense. And then it almost seems to relieve the situation a little bit, and so you become a little bit less angry, or whatever.
I think the other thing as well is to forgive yourself, and if you're horrible to someone, you just say sorry, and if you mean it, that should be it. That should be enough. But there are sometimes, the times again with myself and Kirsten, repetitive behavior. Sometimes it does sometimes feel that there's more to it than there is. And they say that sometimes it can be just you're tired or you're just something. And it doesn't justify it. It doesn't justify, but also it does explain the type of person that you are. And if you're someone who doesn't go out of your way to offend or relish in upsetting people, and you care that people get hurt, then it still doesn't mean that you're someone who can always consciously be your best self, and that you've always got space to fail, because that's human. And it's about forgiving yourself and those around you, understanding that, okay, fucking hell, Ads was a bit of a twat. I mean, like, again, just looking back on things that have happened in, I would just pick one epic kind of failures in that respect was like Kaz and Phil's wedding. I was so drunk and I was just such an obnoxious arsehole.
Were you?
Yeah, at one point I was. But it's one of those moments where you think, shit, I did something stupid. I got too drunk, and I wasn't my usual polite, Ace Rimmer self. But at the same time, in the big scheme of it, the who I am outweighs the who I can be sometimes. And it's still part of me, but it's a part of me that isn't prominent, but at the same time is part of who I am, and it's part of the outlet. And sometimes it manifests in a way that's not necessarily nice or healthy, but it is understanding and accepting that sometimes you can be a certain way because of certain factors. And then if you've got people around you who kind of understand that, and then he's having an off day, or, God, he's tired, or get some food in that man. Get that man a burger. He's fucking being obnoxious. It's that, understanding, and the people that you have around you, knowing that, God, that's not who he usually is. And it is who he is, but there's a reason for it. And it's not just being kind of, just being an arsehole for the sake of being an arsehole, but also it's to say the part of the journey is each time you have these moments is that it kind of helps you recognize that they're part of everyday life, and the things they say, the moments where you're weaker for some reason, and you need those people around you who just go, what do you need, mate? Do you need a beer? Do you need a burger? Do you need to go and have a kip? And they don't take it to heart.
So we are reaching the end of our hour. We are 54 minutes, and in the last 6 minutes, I'd just like to think about what we've discussed and go back to the idea of the bucket list. And I think what I think we've said is that it's not all about having grandiose aspirations about, surfing I don't know, riding a great white shark or whatever. They don't have to be ridiculously outlandish things to be on your bucket list, but actually they can be more achievable. They can be more personal. The smaller things in life, there could be something you could do every day that you're not doing, that you're putting off. Is there anything about thinking about the way that we want to be remembered that is part of the bucket list? Does that factor into it? I think it does for me. I do think there is that phrase. I think it was the Dalai Lama. It's like and again, I probably mentioned this on a previous episode, but lead a good life, because you'll live it twice. Once when you're living it, and then once when you're looking back on it. But I'd argue there's also other people looking back on your life that you know and love. So, yeah,
I think it's that point of you're only dead when you're forgotten, and that's a thing of. In some respects, I don't want it to be like, I don't need people to be like, oh, do you remember how a great guy Adam was? But at the same time, I think it's through the experiences, a bit like I was saying about the films and things with my kids' life, and just kind of giving those little bits of insight into kind of my humor and my, the things that make me, who I am, and things like that, living through my children. And also having moments where we have the times where we spend together as young adults, and hopefully we'll do again and again or more as we're older adults. Spending those times, doing things that we just have fondly in our memory.
I think we've definitely got to plan that Alton Towers trip. That's definitely going on the bucket list, because that's a terrific idea.
I do. I think you and I should go and spend a weekend in our caravan, just you and me.
Yes, caravan trip, baby.
And things like that. And just a few things like that are very small, but they're just kind of achievable. If we can just kind of say, just wangle, even just a night over in basically, a couple of days, effectively there a night and the day, and come back. And it's doable in that respects, and it's it's not a huge sort of thing, a mountain to climb, but I do really think, and stuff like, again, like Kaz was saying about like card nights and
card nights, and the kids are getting older, they can participate as well soon.
Yeah,
I mean, make it an adults only thing to begin with, because it is a good laugh. You can have a good old drink and stuff, can't you? But yeah, cards is definitely something that's a very enjoyable thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, and I say it gives you a forum and structure to this like this. It gives us the means to have those moments that possibly could be memory making, and I think that's part in terms of a legacy, in terms of sort of having those moments with people, and and that be enough, just remember, like, oh, when we did that or whatever. And it doesn't have to be, say, huge things, but sometimes just those sort of reasons to get together and do something that possibly just means that it can be either passed down or passed on. I think that's sort of the sort of legacy part. I think could be quite nice, but I'm not that kind of let's all go when we're 50 to Vegas, like I apparently said before. But who knows? In 5 years' time, maybe. It'll be in 15 years' time. You don't know. You make it one of those where it's just at the moment. I think it's that whole, let's try and sort of look at what really is important, and what things can I move out of my way easily to do things that fill the tank, make good memories and help you find your true self and help you something.
And if you're listening to this podcast, maybe try and think about your own things that you'd like to fill the tank with and how you'd like to connect with people that you care about, and working out what's important to you, and perhaps how you would like your loved ones to remember you, and to bring that into your everyday life. So I think that is a great note to finish on, and I think we should bid adieu and see each other on the next one, mate.
Take it easy, mate.